When I first met Alex, I was just a girl working nights at a bar, promoting beer to rowdy customers. He became the best teacher I ever had. He taught me how to survive, how to play the game of business, how to read people. Until one day, I made the mistake of falling in love, wanting to stay by his side forever. He only smiled, calm and unreadable, before reminding me. Anna, you know one day I'll have to marry a woman from my own world, a heiress. Chapter 1. His words left me frozen. Even now, I still don't know how to define what Alex and I were. When I first got involved with him, I was 18. Fresh out of high school, with 3 younger brothers to feed, and no chance of college back in our remote mountain town, I had no choice but to work. Without a diploma, the best I could find was a job at a bar, serving drinks, smiling at strangers, fending off the chaos that came with smoke, liquor, and too many men with too much money. I was hot-headed then, reckless and naive. On my very first month, I smashed a beer bottle over the head of a spoiled rich kid who had tried to humiliate me. He swore he'd have me ruined, maybe even killed. It was Alex who stepped in, the first time he ever bothered to interfere. And I, with nothing else to offer, devoted myself to him. If anything, I didn't think I lost in that bargain. Alex was young, devastatingly handsome, and came from a family so powerful it felt untouchable. By 21, he had already earned a finance degree from one of the world's top universities. His very first acquisition was an old Hong Kong company that had survived for decades, and from then on, he never lost. And that wasn't even counting the vast empire behind him. Falling into Alex's world felt like pure luck, like I had somehow climbed a branch far above my reach. Our relationship was strange. It wasn't just patron and lover. Yes, he gave me money, supported me, made me dependent in ways I couldn't deny. But Alex also had a fierce sense of control, almost an obsession with cleanliness, not just physical, but also emotional exclusivity, no other women, no meaningless flings. With him, it often felt like we were in an exclusive relationship. And more than that, he kept me close. He taught me survival. He taught me business, strategy, how to negotiate, how to read people. He introduced me to networks, opened doors that would have always been shut. He even sent me back to school. He built me a future, one I could never have imagined on my own. But what exactly was he to me? A benefactor? A teacher? A lover? A boyfriend? Each label seemed right, and yet none of them fit. I never asked Alex to define it. He would only smile faintly and say, "Anna, I'll give you opportunities. Show me how far you can go." And I didn't let him down. I became his best student, his greatest creation. With his name behind me, I opened my first bar without spending a cent. Never leave easy money on the table. That was one of Alex's first lessons. By the time I was 22, every prime location in City A was mine. Every bar on those streets bore my mark. I was no longer that girl who drank herself sick just to earn a few $100s. Now, people greeted me with respect, "Boss Anna," even though I was still so young. It was Alex who scrubbed the dirt of the mountains off me. He gave me the tools to survive, reshaped me into someone entirely new. He made me capable, independent, calm under pressure. He gave me another version of life. Everyone feared him. They said he was ruthless, merciless. Everyone but me. I loved him. I trusted him. I worshipped him. In my heart, I put him on a pedestal so high he felt untouchable. He was my god. One day, I asked Alex why it had to be me. I never believed in fairy tales, never believed in love at first sight. He lit a cigarette, smoke curling around his face, sharp and distant in the dim light. "That fire in you," he said. "It reminds me of myself, once." Alex came from an old, powerful family. His father had a lover he adored, and Alex grew up with a tangle of half-brothers. Every decision was a power play, every alliance a calculation. By the time Alex rose to lead the family, he must have fought through hell. So maybe he pulled me up out of curiosity, or just on a whim. He taught me survival, gave me weapons and tactics, only to see how far a girl with nothing could go. I was his experiment. But I, foolishly, gave him my heart. For a long time, I let myself believe Alex wasn't completely without feeling for me. Why else would he spend so much time and effort on me? Why else would I be the only woman in his life? Why else would he treat me with such care? Every moment I spent with him, the thought rose up again and again, only for me to force it back down. I wanted to ask if he truly loved me. But I was too afraid. Alex had taught me never to make a move without certainty. And with him, I could never be sure. So I didn't dare gamble. Chapter 2. What finally made me see clearly happened during one of Alex's biggest business deals. His partner set eyes on me and had the audacity to ask Alex if he could borrow me for a night. Alex's expression turned to ice as he refused. Later, that same man had me snatched from a parking lot, boasting that he never failed to get what he wanted. If Alex wanted the deal, he said, he'd have to prove his sincerity. But Alex didn't abandon me. The moment he got the news, he stormed the man's private club with his people. When he kicked open the door, he found me perfectly fine, smiling as I had the man tied up, with a whole collection of compromising photos ready to make him more than willing to sign the contract. I held up the signed contract and smiled at Alex, who was still standing in the doorway, his face dark with fury. "You forget," I told him, "I'm your student." Alex stared at me in silence. Only after a long moment did the corner of his mouth lift. He said with a faint smile, "Anna, you're just like me." He was a proud, arrogant man. That was probably the highest praise he could ever give. Later, I asked Alex what he would have done if things had gone differently that night. If I hadn't saved myself, if he had burst in to find me in a humiliating scene, what then? In my mind, I thought he would have discarded me without hesitation. His obsession with control and purity ran far deeper than most could imagine. But that night, he simply looked at me, quiet for a long while, before sighing. "I don't know, Anna," he said. "I don't even want to think about it." His words stunned me and planted a dangerous hope in my heart. That hope only grew stronger as, under his protection, my name began appearing more and more often beside his. Alex made me realize I wasn't just a parasite clinging to him. Even without him, I could stand on my own. That was the confidence he gave me. A woman who was beautiful, had a story, and had clawed her way out of fate itself, recognized by the notoriously aloof Alex as his only girlfriend. Inevitably, such a legend carried a certain mystique. People considered it an honor just to catch a glimpse of me. Business at all my bars boomed, money pouring in endlessly. In those days, I thought to myself, someday, I'll prove to Alex that I don't need saving. I can stand shoulder to shoulder with him. But that pride, that sense of triumph, made me lose my balance. I confessed to Alex on my 23rd birthday. With my heart pounding, a mix of hope, joy, and dread tangled inside me, I swallowed my shyness and spoke with all the honesty I had. "Alex, I truly love you." The words fell into silence, stretching unbearably long. His eyes fixed on my face, studying the calm I pretended to wear, his gaze dark and impossible to read. I had never been able to see through him. This time was no different. All I could do was wait. At last, I heard his laugh. The sound was low, edged with amusement, as he reminded me. "Anna, you do realize that one day I'll have to marry an heiress, don't you?" My heart collapsed, piece by piece. The sweat on my palms cooled into ice, and I felt as though I had been hurled into an endless void, falling with nothing to catch me. All the pride and triumph I had clung to shattered like soap bubbles in the sun, bursting the instant they were touched. Still, I forced myself to smile. I don't know how twisted that smile looked, but I caught the flicker of unease in Alex's eyes. "Then to thank you," I said with brittle brightness, "I'll make sure to send you something unforgettable." To Alex, no gift on earth could ever matter. But he took the escape I offered him, stepping down gracefully. He smiled and said, "All right." And I was grateful for that moment of mercy. It was the first and the last time I ever confessed to Alex. A fleeting gesture of kindness from him, something casual and effortless. I mistook it for salvation, carved deep into my soul. For a heartbeat, I believed he might truly love me. But it didn't matter. After that day, I never made such a foolish mistake again. Chapter 3. Tiffany appeared 5 years after my confession to Alex. For all those years, every eligible heiress who could match Alex's status hung over me like the sword of Damocles, a shadow I could never escape. And when that sword finally fell, I was far calmer than I ever imagined I could be. At first, I didn't even know. It was one of Alex's friends who warned me. Anna, Alex has been spending a lot of time at a university lately. You should be careful. No one said anything after that. They didn't need to. Everyone already knew. Anna, the only girlfriend Alex had ever publicly acknowledged, was out. The girl he was seeing was Tiffany, the only daughter of a bank president, still in graduate school, bright and carefree, untouched by the world. I knew their story began in Paris. That romantic city wasn't as safe as it seemed, petty thieves and biker gangs roamed the streets. Tiffany had her bag snatched, and for some reason she chased the thieves, reckless and determined. Alex went after them to help her, and ended up with a knife wound on his arm for his trouble. That was how they met, the perfect tale of danger, gallantry, and rescue. And what follows such a beginning is inevitable. Gratitude, shared dinners, familiar smiles, a closeness that grows day by day. I only found out because, after Alex returned home, I noticed the scar on his arm, half healed. When I touched it and asked what happened, he brushed it off with a casual tone, as if it were nothing. After explaining, he set down his silverware. He didn't try to hide anything, he simply looked at me with that detached calm and said, "Anna, she's from my world. Her father wants the alliance as well. If everything goes smoothly, I'll probably be getting married." He didn't say the rest aloud, but I understood perfectly. I lowered my head, pretending nonchalance as I cut into my steak. My hands trembled so badly I couldn't press the knife down. After a pause, I put the utensils aside and lifted my glass of wine instead. I took a sip before forcing myself to look up at Alex. I even managed a steady smile, my voice level, not shaking, at least I hoped not. "Congratulations," I said. Alex studied me in silence. In his eyes, a flicker of hesitation passed, but he said nothing. Things between him and Tiffany progressed quickly. I heard that Alex visited her campus every week. They ate together at the food stalls by the South Gate, went hiking, played golf. And he hadn't contacted me in a long time. I couldn't resist. I followed him. It was an ordinary Saturday, the weather perfect. Alex walked Tiffany through an amusement park, and they tried everything: roller coasters, Ferris wheels, every ride that made her laugh with that unrestrained, youthful joy. From far behind, I watched. Tiffany's laughter was bright, alive, contagious. Alex stayed close to her the entire time, protecting her at every turn. I told myself it was just his sense of courtesy, his gentlemanly habit. But I couldn't unsee it, the moment, fleeting and unconscious, when he tilted his head toward her, gaze soft, lips curving in a quiet smile. At last, when they sat side by side on the carousel, sharing a panda-shaped ice cream, I turned quietly and walked away. Alex never wasted time on things that didn't serve a purpose. Every move he made was always toward some greater goal. Like the time he flew all the way to Africa, climbing over 5,000 meters up Mount Kilimanjaro just to win over a difficult investor. But now, here he was, sitting in an amusement park, eating panda-shaped ice cream with Tiffany, smiling as if it was the simplest, purest joy in the world. For the first time, I couldn't tell. Was he doing all this just for the sake of an alliance? Or was it because he truly wanted to? All I knew was that the sword of Damocles, hanging above me for so long, had finally fallen. And maybe that was a relief. At least I wouldn't have to live in constant fear anymore, sleepless and restless, wondering when it would strike. Chapter 4. I told Alex I wanted to break up. He didn't ask why. He didn't need to. After 10 years by his side, since I was 18, I had absorbed so much of him. Even unintentionally, I carried 70% of his shadows. The coldness. The distance. The calculating patience. The constant weighing of gain and loss. I had seen too many women humiliate themselves, clinging desperately after a breakup. Long ago, I warned myself, if I ever left Alex, I would never let that happen to me. We would part cleanly. No scenes. No mess. Alex had never truly wronged me. And besides, he had warned me from the very beginning. I once came across a question: when a relationship has no future, is the companionship a punishment or a gift? Someone answered, if you're not greedy, it's a gift. I wasn't greedy. Alex had broadened my world, reshaped my life, and given me 10 years of his company. That was enough. I had no regrets. So when we parted, I was able to smile with dignity, to sincerely wish him well. Congratulations, I told him. He sat on the sofa by the window, gazing absently outside, and replied, distracted. It's just a marriage alliance. Nothing worth congratulating. What he didn't know was that I wasn't congratulating him on his engagement. I was congratulating him on his empire, about to expand exactly the way he had planned. A man like Alex, with that ambition, with that background, was never going to marry for love. No. More likely, Alex never believed in love at all. He stood and walked away. But for some reason, at the door, his steps faltered. And then I heard his voice, soft enough to sound almost tender. Anna, take care of yourself. Long after he left, I sat there alone, motionless, as sunlight slanted through the tall windows, inch by inch fading into dusk. Only then did I raise a hand to my cheek. It was wet and cool. I hadn't even realized I was crying. So maybe I wasn't as composed as I thought. A bitter laugh slipped out of me. In public, though, under curious stares, I carried on with work as if Alex's absence hadn't left a mark at all. I never expected Tiffany to come find me. Just as I had been curious about her, perhaps she was just as curious about me. She came with a few friends. As I walked past, I overheard one of the girls whisper to the young woman half hidden behind a glass. Look, that's the famous Anna. The woman set down her cup and glanced at me with open curiosity, her face clean and unmistakably familiar. I pretended not to notice, meeting Tiffany's gaze with a polite smile. Her cheeks flushed instantly. Of course she was curious about the woman who had once been at the center of her fiancé's most notorious love story. After all, to outsiders, what Alex and I had shared looked like a Cinderella tale, a rescued girl, and the one man rumored to have given her all of his rare and fragile affection. She was curious about me. I understood. In that moment, I couldn't quite name the feeling inside me, only a quiet sigh in my heart. So this was what it meant, that in Alex's world, even the name Anna carried weight, enough to inspire caution and jealousy. Maybe that was why, on the day Alex and Tiffany got engaged, her family sent me an invitation too. A warning, loud and clear. I understood. Most people assumed I wouldn't show up. But I did. And not only that, I came bearing an lavish present. That, too, was something Alex had taught me: the more people want to see you stumble, the more beautifully you must smile. I was his student. In public, I never allowed anyone to see me fall. When the newlyweds came by to toast their guests, I smiled flawlessly, my gaze moving gracefully from Alex to Tiffany. Up close, I studied her openly. She was beautiful, still soft with youth, and it was plain she had been sheltered her whole life. Her eyes carried a kind of innocence untouched by the world. She lifted her glass toward me. When our eyes met, she stuck out her tongue playfully, like a girl unafraid of being caught. Congratulations, I said. Thank you, she replied. The entire exchange lasted less than a minute, maybe not even that. But in that single minute, I poured every ounce of strength I had into the performance. It was the first time I had seen Alex since our breakup. On the surface I looked composed, but inside I was unraveling, terrified someone would see through me. But Alex didn't even look my way. His gaze stayed on Tiffany, following her every small movement. the hem of her dress brushing the floor, the slight crease between her brows as she sipped her wine. Even the way she studied me, his eyes were fixed on her, not me. Alex's world had always been divided by boundaries. People fell into two categories, family and everyone else. Among the latter, there were only two further distinctions, useful and useless. And now it was clear. Tiffany, as his fiancée, belonged in the category of family. And I was nothing but an outsider, stripped of value. Not worth even a glance. I smiled anyway, lifting my glass one more time toward Tiffany, until Alex finally cast me a cool, warning look. I lowered my eyes and drained the wine in one swallow. Before the wedding banquet even ended, I slipped away. No one noticed my absence, nor did they need to. The warning had been delivered. That was enough. To the outside world, I was merely the lover Alex had kept around for too long, someone he had already discarded. A woman who could never be seen on the main stage, destined never to become anything of consequence. Even Sarah teased me with a laugh. Not amount to anything? Tiffany's family treated you like such a threat they invited you just to send a warning. Isn't that its own kind of respect? I laughed too. Maybe it was. After all, Alex had poured enough time and energy into me to stir rumors and whispers everywhere. He was a man with no time to waste, and yet he had pulled me up from the abyss, shaping me like a sculptor working a block of stone, chiseling, refining, until I became his finest piece of art. And of course, everyone believed the sculptor must love his creation. Only I knew the truth. To him, I was nothing more than a whim, a passing distraction. Chapter 5. I turned off my phone and spent a long stretch in France. That's where I met a man named Chad. Don't misunderstand, we never became anything more. He was an artist, gifted and exuberant, 3 years younger than me. He chased me relentlessly. Once, I teased him. Don't men like you usually prefer the sweet, innocent heiress type? Chad's eyes were light in color, soft and gentle. Not like Alex's, his gaze was always cool, detached, as if nothing truly mattered. Chad smiled at me. That might be true for other men. But me? I like your kind. My kind. I laughed bitterly, cigarette smoke curling between us, and turned my head toward the window, drained of all interest. Chad truly liked me. He said I was like a cat, and also like a drifting cloud, impossible to pin down, careless and elusive. My gaze, he said, never lingered on one place for more than a minute. On me was a beauty like a rose at its peak, already on the edge of decay, carrying a touch of ruin. He wanted me with everything he had. But after a month, he finally gave up. Rarely had I seen him so defeated. All he said was, "Anna, you don't love me." I laughed. Didn't you say you loved me exactly because of this carelessness in my bones? He dropped his smile, expression turning solemn. Because back then, I thought you would fall in love with me. But now I know, I'll never be able to hold on to you. Later, he painted a portrait of me. In it, I was barefoot, sitting on a bench beneath the vineyard's trellises. I wore a white shirt, my chestnut curls cascading down to my waist, strands lifted by the breeze. The green vines stretched endlessly, heavy with clusters of ruby grapes hanging like strings of jewels. But the woman in the painting looked unbearably lonely, her expression filled with quiet sorrow. That painting was displayed in his solo exhibition. He told me that after his world tour ended, he would gift it to me. Before he left, Chad asked me, "Anna, who were you thinking of that day?" And then he added, almost bitterly, "Whoever it was, I envy him. He's a lucky man." I looked at that painting and thought, love really is cruel. No matter how extraordinary a person is, if it cannot be returned, it remains forever out of reach. In this world, almost everything else can be fought for. With enough effort, there's always a chance. But not love. Love is the one thing effort cannot win. I had fought so hard, for so long, yet the finish line I reached wasn't even the starting point for Tiffany. And what else could I do? All that was left was to try, at least, to find some scrap of happiness for myself. I gave myself a break. I wandered through many places and eventually stopped at La Diga, an island ringed with pale pink sand. It was said to be one of the most beautiful beaches in the Indian Ocean, perfect for anyone wanting to do nothing but drift and breathe. But maybe when someone is already heartbroken, misfortune has a way of chasing after her. That's where I saw Tiffany. She was in a white dress, alone, with two foreign men circling her, trying to strike up a conversation. Tiffany's body language made it clear she wasn't interested. I hesitated, glanced around, but saw no sign of Alex. I hadn't wanted to get involved until the men grew bolder, pressing closer, their hands reaching toward her. I sighed, rose to my feet, stretched my arms, and started walking toward them. Alex had taught me kickboxing. Back when I opened my first bar, the place was crawling with all sorts of people. Alex wasn't known publicly yet, and to others I was just a pretty face running a bar, an easy target. One time, a local thug harassed me. Half joking, half hoping, I complained to Alex, still with that girlish wish that maybe he would step in for me. But he didn't. Instead, he took me to his private training room and began teaching me how to fight. I still remember what he said. "Anna, I could deal with that man for you. But if I do, you'll always need me to stand in front of you. You need to learn to protect yourself." At the time, I didn't understand. I trained bitterly for half a year. Until the day that same thug grabbed my chin, and I caught his arm and threw him flat onto the ground. That night, when the thug stormed off, shouting that I should just wait, I noticed Alex sitting quietly in the corner, watching me. There was a smile at the corner of his lips, his gaze warm with approval, like a teacher proud of his best student. But maybe it had been too long since I practiced. Driving off, the two foreigners who circled Tiffany left me with scraped hands. I hid them behind my back, ready to slip away, content to let the moment pass without recognition. But Tiffany called out to me. She thanked me earnestly, insisting she wanted to take me to dinner. I politely declined. And as I turned to leave, her reluctant expression made me pause. Almost without thinking, I asked, "Is Alex here?" I hadn't meant anything by it. I only worried that if Alex knew I was here too, he might think I was following him and Tiffany. Even I found it hard to believe it was all just coincidence. But Tiffany seemed to misunderstand. She froze for a second, then answered with flawless manners. "He's away on business." I got bored and slipped out on my own. I hesitated, then said, "You should head back soon. It's not safe at night." She nodded, but lingered where she was, biting her lower lip, clearly wrestling with something she wanted to say. She was too young to hide her thoughts. Watching her, I sighed and asked, "Is there something you want to ask me?" She shot me a quick glance, then lowered her eyes, almost embarrassed. "Are you still seeing Alex?" she asked softly. "I've heard your story. It sounds so romantic." Honestly, even after all the people I dealt with, I didn't know how to respond to Tiffany in that moment. Maybe my silence gave her the wrong idea, because Tiffany rushed to explain. "I didn't mean anything by it. Alex and I, it's just a business arrangement. In families like ours, it's normal for men to have someone else outside." She paused, then hastily added, as if to soften the sting, "I actually like you." That kind of a liking caught me off guard. I let out a bitter smile. And for reasons I couldn't explain, I still told her. Alex wouldn't. Tiffany blinked at me, confused. I smiled at her. She had no way of knowing, Alex would never cheat, never keep a lover. His obsession with cleanliness, not just physical, but also emotional exclusivity, wasn't just physical, it was born from the chaos of his childhood, from a father who had broken his mother's heart with endless affairs. Alex would never become that man. If he chose to be engaged, he would be loyal to his future wife. Family meant everything to him. Before we parted, I hesitated, then said quietly, "Please, don't tell Alex we met today, all right?" Her eyes showed uncertainty, but she nodded obediently. Even so, unease followed me back to the hotel. I started packing my bags, only to be interrupted by a knock at the door. It was a hotel staff member, politely handing me a package. "Miss Wei, a gentleman asked me to deliver this, some disinfectant and ointment for your injury." I froze, staring down at the items in my hands. I didn't believe Tiffany had told him. She was too young to keep her thoughts hidden, a few careless words, and Alex would have pieced everything together himself. Running my fingers over the bag, I sighed. If he was sending me medicine, it meant he acknowledged the favor I'd done for Tiffany today. And even if he believed my being on La Diga wasn't a coincidence, he wouldn't pursue it further. Still, as I looked down at the box of medicine, another sigh escaped me. Chapter 6. Maybe because of what happened on La Diga, Tiffany naturally began treating me as one of her own. She often came by my bar. Honestly, it was exhausting. To outsiders, Tiffany was just a sheltered heiress, naive and untouched by the world. But me, Anna, I'd been fighting my way through life since I was 18. If I spent too much time with Tiffany, people would assume I had ulterior motives, that I was deliberately trying to get close to her. And both Tiffany's family and Alex were people I could never afford to offend. So I avoided her for a while. But eventually, I had to make my rounds at the bars. When Tiffany saw me, she asked if I had been avoiding her. Her expression was desolate as she slumped over the table, one slender finger tracing the petals of a daffodil lying there, her whole demeanor shadowed with melancholy. With her family name, her background, and the way she'd been cherished all her life, I couldn't understand why she looked so weighed down. But I couldn't bring myself to dislike her. I sighed and said, "This isn't a place you should be. If your father finds out, he'll be furious." Tiffany tilted her head toward me and asked, "Anna, do you know? Daffodils and bars really don't belong together." Then she added softly, "Even if you fill every bar with daffodils, that person still won't understand your feelings." I froze. When I had first placed daffodils in my bars, Alex had also given me that half-smile, half-mocking look. "Anna, who puts daffodils in a bar?" he'd said. He never knew, daffodils mean unrequited love. It was rare for me to be this childish, this stubborn. But I wanted the world to see my obsession, the love I could never have. And still, Alex would never know. Tiffany seemed to think of something then. She smiled, her cheeks flushed with wine, her eyes shining. "You probably don't know this. When Alex and I met in Paris, my bag was stolen. I shouted for help, and out of all those people, he was the only one who ran after the thief. He got cut on the arm, but he brought my bag back. When he handed it to me, he even warned me, no matter what's inside, don't ever chase again. It's too dangerous." The truth is, that bag only held one thing, a ring my mother gave me when I turned 18. I just thought, if I lost it, she would be heartbroken. She lifted her eyes to me, dark and innocent. After that, well, you know the rest. Honestly, when my father asked if I wanted to marry Alex, I hesitated for a long time. Because the story of you and Alex, it sounded so beautiful, like a salvation. I didn't want to marry a man who already had someone in his heart. But I had no choice. If it wasn't him, it would be someone else. So I chose him. She said it in a casual tone, as though it didn't matter, but the loss written on her face was obvious. Her gaze drifted back to the flowers on the table, eyes hazy with alcohol and sorrow. "Anna," she asked, "do you hate him? For choosing an alliance over you, for betraying your love, do you hate him? Don't hate him. When you went to France, he went too." She faltered then, as if catching herself, and didn't finish the thought. I froze for a second but dismissed it. Alex traveled constantly for meetings around the world. We hadn't crossed paths in France. I only gave a helpless, bitter laugh. Only someone as sheltered as Tiffany could still believe the world was that black and white. In her eyes, only two people in love would ever make such sacrifices. In fact, before Tiffany ever appeared, I had once asked Alex if he could ever fall in love with me. What had he said then? Oh yes, he gave me that faint, careless smile and replied, "Anna, we're too much alike." I understood what he meant. I was shaped by his hand, carrying too many of his shadows. Two people too alike could only share warmth, never love. I didn't answer Tiffany. Instead, I pressed my hand over her glass and said quietly, "You're drunk." She smiled at me, then nodded. "Yes, I'm drunk," she murmured. And almost as if to prove her point, she slumped forward onto the table, fast asleep. I fetched a blanket and draped it over her, then picked up my phone and dialed Alex. It was the first time I had called him since our breakup. He arrived quickly, bringing with him the sharp chill of winter air. But when he looked down at Tiffany's peaceful, sleeping face, his expression was soft. He lifted her carefully into his arms, then finally turned his gaze to me. With the politeness of a stranger, he inclined his head. "Thank you." I answered with equal detachment. "You're welcome." As he turned to leave, I don't know why, but the words slipped out before I could stop them. "Tiffany said you went to France too?" Alex froze mid-step. Then he turned sharply back. I had never seen that expression on him before. With me, he had always been calm, always gentle. But now his face was like stone, his eyes cold and cutting. "What did she tell you?" he demanded. I was stunned, caught off guard. "Nothing," I answered instinctively. "Just that it was a coincidence." Alex studied my face carefully, as if trying to see whether I was lying. I looked back at him, bewildered, until I noticed the subtle way he exhaled, his body easing from its tension. Only then did I realize Alex had been nervous. I had never seen him nervous before. The year his company went public, just before he rang the bell at the stock exchange, I had stood before a massive window, tying his tie. I'd teased him with a smile, asking if he was nervous. He had only smiled faintly, his expression cool, and asked me in return, "What's there to be nervous about?" In all things, he had always seemed unshakable. But now, he was nervous. I didn't know why, and I didn't have time to find out. Alex simply gave me a detached nod, then turned and walked away, Tiffany asleep in his arms. That was the last time I ever saw him. Chapter 7. Tiffany never came to see me again. Maybe her family had warned her. Maybe Alex had. Or maybe she was simply too busy. She graduated, and her wedding with Alex made the front page of every financial paper. A spectacle of wealth and extravagance, exactly the kind of wedding every girl dreams of. Even when I wanted to ignore it, the news found its way to me, forced into my sight. Days passed. One after another. I sold most of my bars, keeping only the one in the city center, the very first I had ever opened, and the one that still thrived. Sarah sighed at me. "Love is gone, and now you don't even care about the money?" I laughed. Back when I was with Alex, I was notorious for being a workaholic. I had already earned enough money to live in comfort for the rest of my life. Back then, I worked so hard out of longing, hoping that one day, I might reach some invisible standard. But now, I was tired. All I wanted was rest. I stayed with my one bar, and life passed quietly, peacefully. Every so often, I would see Alex on television or in the news, and it felt almost like something from another lifetime. The sense of unreality would wash over me. Alex's marriage with Tiffany was a perfect match, and by all appearances, a happy one. They attended galas, appeared at friends' gatherings, sat for interviews with magazines. I once read an article about them. I don't remember the title anymore, only the gist. Some people test love in poverty, while others find love balanced and equal within a powerful marriage. I even thought about leaving City A. Not out of melodrama, just to try living somewhere new. But after traveling through other cities, I realized I still loved City A the most. I was used to its climate, its dampness, its food, its traffic, and the older I grew, the harder change became. The final push came one day when I was having lunch with Sarah. She told me Tiffany was pregnant. She watched my face carefully, then sighed. "Let it go, Anna." Just last week, Alex spent 9 figures at my auction house on a colored diamond ruff. We thought he meant to collect it, so we asked how he planned to use it. He smiled and said his wife loved green, and since their baby was due in the year of the pig, he wanted to have the diamond carved into a little pig for her to keep. I listened with a faint smile, feigning nonchalance, and said casually, "How enviable their love is." Sarah hesitated, swallowed her words, and in the end said nothing more, only sighed again. I ran into Tiffany and Alex a few months later. City A wasn't too big, but not too small either. I saw them at the supermarket, Alex pushing a cart, unusually domestic, Tiffany at his side. She was heavily pregnant by then, her girlishness softened into gentle maturity. They were picking out household items together. I turned away with my own cart and avoided them. Later, in the underground parking lot, my arms full of bags, I slipped and fell. Pain flared in my palms and knees, and everything scattered across the ground. A young couple stopped to help, gathering my things and pulling me up, asking if I needed more help. I thanked them politely, reassured them I was fine. Then I drove myself home. The traffic was heavy, 7 or 8 kilometers took nearly an hour. By the time I arrived, it was already dark. The apartment was pitch black. I didn't bother turning on the lights. I set the bags down at the entrance and limped over to the sofa. I wasn't thinking about anything. I just sat quietly in the dark. At some point, I drifted off. When I woke again, the room was still dark. It felt as though the whole world had emptied, leaving only me. The silence was so deep I could hear my own heartbeat. Startled, I fumbled for my phone and checked. Barely any time had passed. Sitting there in the darkness, I suddenly laughed. It was then that I decided to leave. And once the decision was made, I moved quickly. I prepared to emigrate. I sold my last bar. Every asset was handled carefully. What I could take with me, I did. What I couldn't, I donated. I managed it all quietly, without fuss. In the end, at the airport, only Sarah came to see me off. She held back tears and said, "Take care of yourself." I smiled gently and replied, "I will." Just before the plane took off, as I was about to switch off my phone, I received a message from Tiffany. We hadn't spoken in so long. She had sent me a picture, taken who knows when. It was a painting I knew well. The one Chad had made of me in France, the one he had titled An Untouchable Love, the one he had promised to give me after his world tour. But not long after, he had called me in frustration to say the painting had been sold to an anonymous buyer. "Anna, it wasn't that I didn't care," he had said. "I swore it wasn't for sale. I fought to keep it. But the price he offered, it was impossible to refuse. I'll paint you another," he promised. "This time I'll call it The Woman I Couldn't Have." I had only mocked him lightly. "Don't bother. Save the title for the next woman you can't have." And that was the end of it. But now, Tiffany had sent me that very painting. It was hanging in Alex's study. So he had been the one who bought it. In the chat window, Tiffany's message appeared and disappeared several times before she finally settled on her words. "Anna, I'm sorry I didn't send this to you sooner. Forgive my selfishness. Wishing you a safe journey." I gripped my phone tightly, staring at the photo until the flight attendant came by to remind me to switch to airplane mode. In that instant, my thoughts spun wildly. And when they finally stilled, all that remained was a silent sigh. So it had been him who bought the painting. I don't know why, but suddenly I remembered Tiffany's question to me, did I hate Alex? I didn't hate him. If not for him, who knows what I would have become in that bar, chewed up and spat out. Alex had pulled me out of the mud. He had given me so much, everything, except love. How could I hate him for that? But now, because of this painting, I realized, at some point, without me ever knowing it, he had loved me too. If I had known earlier. If only I had known earlier. I still wouldn't have stayed. Life shifts with time, and feelings change with circumstance. Tiffany was a good girl. In the long days of marriage, in their life together, Alex would come to love her. They had their own family, their own ambitions. Alex was never the kind of man to stop for one woman. And I would never humiliate myself by clinging where I wasn't wanted. I had finally let go. Tears slid slowly down my cheeks, and I laughed through the crying. So Alex had loved me, after all. All the regrets, all the obsessions, they finally found their resting place. With tears and a smile, I looked out the window. Blue sea, endless sky, clouds rising like tides. And on that day, at last, with the wings Alex himself had taught me to build, wings of survival, of independence, I flew beyond his sky. At last, I was free.